Smithsonian called 1968 the year that shattered America. It was our deadliest year in Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson abdicated the presidency, and Bobby Kennedy was killed for seeking it. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Riots exploded in cities across America, and Akron's racial peace was shattered as well. 50 years ago, blacks and whites lived separately in Akron. Hotels, movie theaters, skating rinks, and swimming pools were effectively segregated. Cafeterias at Goodyear and Firestone were separated by color. Some Akron cemeteries accepted African American burials, but they were laid to rest in the colored section. In 1960, classified ads in the Beacon Journal still listed housing as colored or white. Goodyear Heights and Firestone Park had deed covenants that no sale could occur to a person of African or Ethiopian descent. Akron's urban renewal program effectively wiped out dozens of intact African American neighborhoods. In 1968, this 21-year-old Akron U student got his first real job in broadcast news on a Sunday night in July. It was to have been a special week with the opening of the Blossom Music Center, but it would become the most tumultuous week in Akron's history. Wednesday, July 17th, was hot and humid. At 1 o'clock in the morning, teenagers broke windows at Olson Electronics on State Street, and on Worcester Avenue, 400 young people waited for the police to arrive, gathering in the 4 blocks between Rhodes Avenue and Raymond Street. They threw rocks and bottles. Grocery and drugstores on Worcester Avenue were looted. A Molotov cocktail set fire to Murphy Lumber. 16-year-old Leo Stegel ran from the police. 2 Akron cops fired 3 shots, wounding him. By 2 a.m., 300 police and sheriff's deputies were on duty. 42 arrests were made. At 3 a.m., Mayor Ballard called for the National Guard. Department stores closed early because of a 9 p.m. curfew. And General Sylvester Del Corso said, "I have 450 men. Their weapons are loaded. Their bayonets are fixed. If we order you to stop and you do not, you will be shot." Akron's town crier, Kenny Nichols, wrote, "Worcester Avenue is where the Great Depression never ended." Mayor Ballard was concerned about a deep and serious hostility by blacks towards Akron police. The NAACP president said he was concerned about a deep and serious hostility by Akron police towards some Negro citizens. On Thursday, July 18th, businesses on Worcester Avenue closed. Next to the barber shop, people gathered at a storefront rented by the Afro-American Liberation Front. Soldiers used tear gas to disperse them. 106 people were arrested. Most of the store owners on Worcester Avenue were Jewish. Max Minty's Fish Market, Stan's Family Store, closed for good. The Sparkle Market was destroyed. Its owner, Carl Saferstein, saying 25 years of his life was down the drain. Black leaders said owners provided inferior merchandise at excessive prices. They called for a boycott of white businesses. On Friday, West Akroners wondered how would they get to Blossom Music Center with a curfew in effect. Mayor Ballard said anyone with tickets to Blossom would be given a pass. That night, 20 fires were set. Red's supermarket on Edgewood was gutted. 53 more arrests were made. On Saturday, African American leaders said they'd warned this was going to happen. The mayor agreed to lift what they said was now a black man's curfew, and that night the violence spread to Arlington Street on the east side. More looting, more tear gas. A truck driver was pulled from his truck and beaten. By Sunday, 1,000 National Guardsmen were encamped at the Akron Rubber Bowl. They had armored personnel carriers and machine guns. The curfew was reimposed. Councilman Ed Davis despaired, "These kids are leaderless and running wild." On Monday, there were 3 fire bombings. 61 arrests were made. White reporters were banned from a community meeting at the Urban League. Young African Americans said to their elders, "For all of your patience and forbearance, where has it gotten you?" Daily life around Summit County was tense. The curfew emptied streets as far north as Hudson. Akron's downtown bars and nightclubs had now been closed for 6 straight nights, and all of the go-go girls working in the city had packed up and left. On Tuesday, the Beacon's publisher, Ben Maidenberg, arranged for a peace conference. An 11-man committee asked the mayor for a chance to end the violence. Talks continued all day. At 8:30 p.m., with both sides exasperated, Maidenberg asked who would stand and commit to do everything in their power to end the violence. 11 men stood. At 8:40, the curfew was lifted, and Homel Calhoun brought a sound truck from his record store. There was a street dance on Worcester Avenue. After 6 nights, 57 fire bombings, 400 arrests, and the mobilization of 1,000 soldiers, Worcester Avenue would never be the same again. That night in Cleveland, snipers from a black nationalist group killed 3 Cleveland police officers. A few days later, Mayor Ballard appointed a new commission to study the cause of the riots. The disorders were not deliberately started, they said, but there were groups receptive to trouble and willing to encourage it. Collective violence is the measure of people's desperation when there is no other way to be heard. That fall, Hubert Humphrey and Richard Nixon campaigned in Akron for president. In 1969, the city would hire new recreation supervisors, invest in new athletic fields, install a small swimming pool behind the fire station on Worcester Avenue, and started recruiting African-American candidates for the police and fire departments. So in recent years, $200 million has been invested in the Worcester Avenue area with new homes, a new zoo, a new library, a new urban league, community learning center. Edgewood Homes replaced the old projects. And now, for the first time in 50 years, something else has returned to the neighborhood: hope. Thank you.